Hello, and welcome back to Liberal Breakdown. Today, we need to talk about the latest twist in Trump's unpredictable foreign policy. After years of cozying up to Vladimir Putin, defending Russia at every turn, and even questioning U.S. intelligence agencies over their findings on Russian interference, Trump is suddenly mad at Putin. And not just that, he's threatening tariffs on Russian goods.
Just hours ago, President Trump called me to tell me he is, quote, pissed off with Russia's President Putin and threatened to impose secondary tariffs on Russia's oil. Quote, if Russia and I are unable to make a deal on stopping the bloodshed in Ukraine, and if I think it was Russia's fault, which it might not be, but if I think it was Russia's fault, I am going to put secondary tariffs on all oil coming out of Russia. Mr. Trump said 25% tariffs on Russian oil could happen any moment and told me he plans to speak with President Putin this week. The president told me, quote, I was very angry, pissed off when Putin started getting into Zelensky's credibility and started talking about new leadership in Ukraine.
So, what's really going on here? Is this some kind of 4D chess move? Or is it just another episode in Trump's self-serving political theater? Let's break it down. Let's not forget, Trump has spent years downplaying Russia's aggression. He openly praised Putin, called him a strong leader, and even suggested that NATO was obsolete, which was basically a green light for Russian expansionism. Remember when he stood next to Putin in Helsinki and publicly dismissed U.S. intelligence findings on Russian election interference? Yeah, that happened. And now, suddenly we're supposed to believe he's standing up to Putin? Excuse me if I'm a little skeptical. So, what changed? Reports say Trump is furious about Russia undermining the U.S. economy. Apparently, he's particularly mad about Russia's role in global oil markets and its economic alliances with China. But let's be real, this isn't about standing up for democracy, human rights, or even U.S. national security. This is about Trump seeing a business threat, because that's how he views everything. And let's not forget, he's got his 2024 campaign in full swing, and he needs to look tough on foreign policy after years of bending over backward for Putin. Suddenly, his past comments about Putin being savvy and brilliant in his invasion of Ukraine aren't playing so well with voters. So now he's shifting gears, hoping people have short memories. Classic Trump move. So let's talk about these tariff threats. Trump is now floating the idea of imposing heavy tariffs on Russian goods. On the surface, that might sound like a tough economic stance, but let's think about this for a second. Trump's history with tariffs is a disaster. His trade war with China? It backfired and hurt American farmers and businesses. His tariffs on steel and aluminum? They increased costs for American companies and didn't bring back manufacturing the way he promised. And now he's acting like tariffs on Russia will somehow be different? The reality is that Trump doesn't actually care about economic strategy. This is just a headline-grabbing move to make it look like he's getting tough, while knowing full well that the economic impact will likely hurt American businesses more than Russia itself. What's also hilarious here is how this move contradicts everything the modern GOP has been doing. Trump's allies in Congress, who have spent years minimizing Russia's threat and downplaying the war in Ukraine, are now scrambling to make sense of this shift. Some of them are still pushing for a weaker response to Russia's aggression, arguing that the U.S. shouldn't be involved in Ukraine. Others are suddenly pretending that they've always been tough on Russia, which is just laughable. And let's not forget Trump's MAGA base. These are the same people who have spent years defending his pro-Putin stance. They've argued that the real enemy is NATO, the European Union, or some bizarre globalist conspiracy. And now they have to watch their hero suddenly pivot and act like he's been anti-Putin all along. The mental gymnastics must be exhausting. Now let's flip the script for a second. Imagine if Joe Biden had spent years cozying up to Putin, dismissed Russian election interference, praised Russia's leaders, and then suddenly turned around and started talking about imposing tariffs. Fox News would be running 24/7 segments about Biden being weak and confused. Right-wing media would be screaming that he's flip-flopping and trying to distract from his own failures. But because it's Trump, suddenly they're pretending this is just strategic brilliance? Give me a break. At the end of the day, this isn't about standing up to Putin. This is about Trump trying to rewrite history, distract from his past failures, and give his campaign a tough guy makeover. He's hoping voters forget his years of appeasement, his disastrous foreign policy blunders, and his complete lack of consistency. But we're not buying it.
Natasha, President Trump threatening to bomb Iran today after the country rejected his invitation to negotiate directly on Iran's nuclear program. But the president, he didn't stop there, saying he's, quote, pissed off at one of the world's most powerful leaders.
My big preference is we work it out with Iran. But if we don't work it out, bad things are going to happen to Iran.
President Trump warning Iran what's at stake Friday and ramping up threats today, telling NBC News if Iran doesn't make a deal, there will be bombing like they've never seen before. The threat from President Trump coming a day after Iran rejected direct negotiations with the U.S. and marks an increasingly aggressive tone taken by the president towards Tehran in the last month.
We're down to final strokes with Iran. That's going to be an interesting time. And we'll see what happens. But we're down to the final moments. We're at final moments. You can't let them have a nuclear weapon. I'd rather see a peace deal than the other, but the other will solve the problem.
Donald Trump is back at it again, making reckless threats, this time against Iran. He's now openly saying that if Iran doesn't agree to a new nuclear deal, the U.S. will resort to bombing. Yes, you heard that right. And how did Iran respond? By outright rejecting any direct negotiations with the U.S. and accelerating its nuclear program. Let's break down what's happening and why this is a disaster in the making. So let's start with Trump's latest remarks. Speaking to reporters, Trump declared that if Iran doesn't agree to a nuclear deal that meets his terms, there will be bombing. Now let's take a step back and think about that. Trump pulled the U.S. out of the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, a deal that was keeping Iran's nuclear ambitions in check. His administration then slapped extreme sanctions on Iran, which predictably led to tensions skyrocketing. And now, after years of failed maximum pressure tactics, Trump is defaulting to his favorite move, threatening war. But here's the thing. This isn't just empty rhetoric. Reports indicate that the U.S. has already deployed B-2 bombers to Diego Garcia, putting them in range of Iran. And Iran? They've responded by putting their missile systems on high alert. This is a crisis spiraling out of control, and Trump is playing with fire. Now, how did Iran respond to all of this? Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian made it crystal clear. There will be no direct negotiations with the U.S. He pointed to Trump's history of breaking agreements, specifically his withdrawal from the 2015 deal, as proof that Washington cannot be trusted. Instead of talking, Iran is now doubling down on its nuclear program. Their enrichment efforts are increasing, and with key restrictions from the old deal set to expire, they have no incentive to slow down. Let's be real. Trump's approach isn't diplomacy, it's provocation. The 2015 deal wasn't perfect, but it was working. It had inspectors on the ground. It was limiting Iran's ability to develop nuclear weapons. Now, we're in a situation where Iran is ramping up its program, and Trump is responding with war threats. This is how conflicts start. The world is watching, and the reactions are telling. European nations that helped broker the original deal are now scrambling to prevent a total collapse. There are even reports that UN sanctions could be reinstated. But let's be clear, if this continues down the path Trump is pushing, we're looking at potential military escalation in the Middle East. Think about what that means. More instability, more lives at risk, and more American troops getting dragged into another endless conflict. And for what? Because Trump doesn't want to admit that the deal he tore up in 2018 was actually keeping things stable? At the end of the day, the real losers in this situation are ordinary people, both in the US and in Iran. Instead of working towards real diplomacy, Trump's ego is pushing us closer to war. Instead of stabilizing the situation, his recklessness is making it worse. So, what do you think? Is Trump actually protecting US interests, or is this just another case of his disastrous foreign policy blowing up in our faces? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We need to keep talking about this before it's too late.